Karl Marx.
This is our buddy Karl Marx. Today we're going to talk about how did the ideas of Karl Marx lead to the Russian Revolution of 1917. Take a moment, put the essential question for the day into your note-taking books. We're going to begin today by looking at not just who Karl Marx was, but more his idea of what Marxism was and how it affected communism and the ideas of people like Lenin and Trotsky, who you saw in our pre-class video, and how these ideas might have eventually led to revolution and a series of events that led all the way to the Cold War and to the modernists. Now, many of the communists believed in one way or the other in the ideas of this man on the right, a German philosopher named Karl Marx, who at this point had already been dead for a few decades. What Marx was famous for was looking at the emerging system of capitalism in places like the United States and Western Europe, and he was one of the biggest critics of capitalism. He saw the goal being the play for more money and a more efficient economy, to produce goods, to produce food quicker, faster, more efficiently, and more cheaply. But he didn't see this as being a good thing. He saw this as taking away the basic human rights of many of the workers who were used to create these things. And he saw the workers that did all the work in a capitalist society as being taken advantage of and being disposable. He saw them as losing their value as people, and he didn't like this. He basically claimed that the factory owners, who he called the bourgeois, would make profits, and big profits, even though they weren't doing the work. The work was being done by a group of people called the proletariats, which is his word for the workers. Marx wrote more entries, journals, pieces of academia, pamphlets than you could ever imagine. But one of his predictions was that eventually the proletariats would not tolerate this anymore, and all it would take is a realization of what was going on. This is why Karl Marx wrote so much. He's trying to explain to the proletariats what was happening to them, the workers, was not something that they should tolerate, that they were being used, and the only thing that was stopping them from rising up was organization and being made aware of what Karl Marx thought he saw so clearly, that the proletariats needed to rise up and take control of their own countries and not do all this work only to benefit the people that own these factories or large businesses who were making money off of their labor. Now, Karl Marx in Western society sometimes gets a bad rap, and oftentimes it's because his ideas, although in some ways making a lot of sense, have oftentimes been used to form governments and countries that have been less than successful. A lot of the governments formed under the guise of Marxism and communism have seen, instead of communist governments form, they've seen dictatorships or authoritarian dictatorships form. They've seen mass famine when the governments weren't able to feed all the people that they claimed they'd be able to do. We've seen lots of problems with it. You're gonna have to decide after watching the video if you really think this is because Marx missed something, or it's just because his ideas were implemented ineffectively. You have to also keep in mind that a lot of times the idea of communism and Marxism works better in small scale than it does in large scale. We talked about this earlier, and that oftentimes if you have a group of people that are going to give up certain individual freedoms to be part of a communist society in which the people or the government own everything and then distribute it based on need, that's got to be something that people agree on. And when you've got a country like Russia with millions and tens of millions of people, and not all of them are going to agree to this, it's going to become a little bit more difficult to implement. Thus the necessity of things like purges and secret police that we're going to see later on. In a moment, I'm going to start a video on Marxism and Marx, but before that, do we have any questions before we get going? Make sure you have the main key terms in your note-taking books: Karl Marx, bourgeois, proletariat. Any questions before we keep going? Vanessa, good? Judy, good? Amanda, okay? Any question? All right. I like the little slide that I attached to the bottom of the video here. Let's read the key ideas of Marxism that have been very simplified, which I thought was perfect for this class. Samuel, can you read key idea of Marxism number 1?
Individuals have lost their ability to make money for themselves. They help others to make money by working a job. This is unfair. This is an unfair relationship as their employers make more money from it than they do.
Interesting. Simona, do you agree with that?
Actually, I didn't quite understand what this means.
So the first idea of Marxism is saying that in a capitalist society, people make money by getting jobs. And these jobs, in which the worker works really hard, they make a little bit of money, but they make a lot of money for their bosses who don't really do very much. Marx says this is unfair and it shouldn't exist like this, that the workers should benefit more from the work that they do. Agree or disagree?
I mean, I feel like it's right in some cases, but not like always.
Amanda, do you want to elaborate a bit? I'm sure you have an opinion on this one.
I didn't hear what they said.
Ethan, what do you think, buddy?
I'm not sure. Like, this is kind of depending on situations, but
It's hard for us. We've grown up accepting the fact that this is how things should be. You get a job, you get paid for your job, and of course your boss and their boss and their boss is going to make more money than you because they're the top of the company, right? Marx says, no, that's not how things should work. There's plenty of things out there. There's plenty of food. There's plenty of resources. These should be more evenly distributed amongst people. We shouldn't have these bosses making so much more than the workers that are working these very long hours to make money for them in the first place. It's an interesting idea, at the very least, to consider. Number 2, can you read for me, Judy?
The people in power seek to maintain this relationship because it means they have a way of controlling everyone. They can always refuse to pay you.
So what are ways that people in power could keep this power? What are the ways that the rich could keep this power over the workers? Anybody have some ideas of what they might do? Jessica, are you there? What might they do? Not sure if Jessica's there. Vanessa, what's a way that the people in power might seek to maintain their power?
Creating laws.
Okay, creating laws to keep themselves in power, sure. What about controlling? Yep, keep going.
Like making them like kind of like making them in debt.
Yeah, we saw that before as well, didn't we? What about controlling education and controlling information? How might that be used? Go ahead, Amanda.
Like you teach them the way they want. Also, another thing, religion.
What do you mean?
It's like people can keep, like, especially during noble times, people can keep in power by religion, because like actually, if you look at the religions, like do your work, it benefits the nobles more than like the people in the bottom. Like they're working for them while like being literally slaves and believing it's right. So like. Actually, a lot of Karl Marx believers, one of their things they did is to get rid of religion because it can be used as a very good political tool.
That's a good point as well. Yeah, if you wanted to look at it that way and you wanted to look at an organized religion simply as a large company, you can see some parallels in the Marxist theory, can't you? Yeah, cool comparison. What about controlling? Well, how important do you think it is to do what Marx was doing? Marx saw the people in power as seeking to maintain this relationship between owners and workers. And one of the main ways they can do this was by not letting the workers know that what's happening is not right. A lot of the workers are uneducated. A lot of them came to the cities in the first place hoping to have these jobs if they're working. They're not going to have time to become educated and understand the intricacies of the system that they're a part of. Karl Marx was seeking to educate the workers and inform them of what was happening to them and trying to show them that they had better options. Number 3, could you please read for us, Tony?
If only we woke up and realized this was the case, and changed the things in our favor, the world would be a better place entirely.
Marx wants people to wake up. He's doing his part. But Justin, how do you think people might wake up and change things for the better? What do you think Marx is hoping for? What do you think his followers later, like Lenin, might be hoping for? How do people wake up and change the world for the better? What do you think could occur? How do you go from a regime with czars and nobility, a monarchy, to go to something like this where everybody is supposed to have enough? Wealth and resources are supposed to be more evenly distributed. Workers are supposed to be better compensated and better appreciated for what they do and what they create. What do you think,
Like
John?
the people should fight back or something.
Well, some people thought that. And as we saw in the pre-class video, before I talk, let me see what Amanda's got first. I see your hand. Go ahead.
It's kind of like rebellion.
Yeah.
Like Karl Marx is just waiting until people can't take it and rebel, and eventually forms a new government.
And
And
that
like
was
he's not expecting this process to end. He's expecting rebel, get better, and sometimes it goes worse because country is like a system with status and stuff, and then like go so worse, rebel again, and make it into a better thing, and just go closer and closer to the blueprint.
And you can see that as well. Yeah, a lot of the early communists and Marxists saw it not just being as a reform of one government, but they thought that once one government did it and one country did it, that the workers of other countries would see it, and then they would start their own rebellions and revolutions as well, and it could even spread around the world. That was the early goals. Of course, we've seen what happened when they actually put it into practice, and because the ideas of Marxism and communism simply didn't work quite as well as Marx thought they might, possibly because there were some flaws in this ideology, possibly because they were implemented incorrectly. I mean, for example, we saw in the pre-class video that Trotsky was not happy at all that Lenin, in trying to implement a communist government, was kind of at the same time forming a dictatorship. You can't really have an authoritarian dictatorship and also have a real communist country, can you? Because because when you have a dictatorship, that's going to necessitate the upper people in the government are going to have more than everybody else, and it kind of just becomes a new sort of monarchy. So we have to see what Lenin actually ended up forming. Trotsky, on the other hand, thought it might be better just to teach and inform the people and push them on their way and not control them through a government like this.